This is your CPU. And then we'll put her in the CPU slot here. Take this plastic covering and we push down on this retention clip and lift it up. And we lift this up gently. Okay, what I was looking for is this little triangle. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but there's a little triangle on the bottom left corner that tells me the orientation of how the chip is going to be mounted. You gently take the CPU chip and you align the bottom left triangle with the bottom left here. And you're going to align it perfectly. It's going to be a little give. That looks good. Perfect. Bottom left. Push this down gently. And we should be good to go. Next, we'll install your solid state drive on this slot right here. Okay, next you align the notch to the slot on the motherboard at a 45-degree angle. You push it down and you align the screw holes with the shield that they provided. This guy. And looks like she's seated. Yep, that looks good. Next we install your blinging RAM. Altogether you have 32 gigabytes and we have 2 sticks, but we have 4 slots. But if you see here, if you have 2 sticks, the first 2 is every other slot starting with this one. So it's these 2 according to this diagram here. Next we align the notch on the bottom of the memory module on the slots of the motherboard. As such, there and I don't know if you can see that, there and there. Okay, and then we push down until these retention clips on the sides snap into place right here. So we push down gently. And on the other side, looks good on this end. Looks good on this end, so we're good. So next up will be the fat graphics card. She's pretty fat. Check her out right there. And she'll be seated in this slot right here. And she takes up 2 slots. So I already took out the 2 slots in the back. And those are your slot covers there. But I got her in there. She's seated firmly. And she's screwed in nicely in the back here. So we're good. That's what it looks so far. Next we're going to install the power supply unit into the case. And she goes down here. So next we'll be mounting the CPU fan on top of the CPU chipset. And that's your fan there. And then I'm going to take this back plate and install it behind the motherboard back here. So she fits right there. And that holds these brackets in place. So I'll go right there. So it gets mounted that way. This is the thermal paste here. You spread this thinly on top of the CPU chipset, and the whole CPU fan fits right on top of it, like that. The amount of screws and hardware that they give you is pretty gnarly, so the instructions is pretty in-depth because of the different types of CPU sockets out there. We have the LGA 1200, so that's what's next. I'm going to spread that thin in an application called buttered toast. It's like buttered toast. Another cool thing to note here is if you look at the fans, you can see these arrows. This indicates which direction the airflow is going. So air is being pushed through the heat sink, so it's going this way. And this arrow here indicates which direction the blades are going. So the blades are going this way. That pushes air through the heat sink, and it cools your CPU all the way down to these fins, down to these heat sinks. And this is the point of contact where I'm going to be placing the CPU fan over the CPU chip with the thermal paste. I had to remove the fan in order to get access to these retention screws. tightening it now. So you're using a cross formation. So I go here first, right, and then not too tight. Get on the other side. And cross formation. Looks good. And when you mount the fan back on the CPU heatsink, this plug goes into the motherboard plug that's marked CPU fan 1. So I don't know if you can see it, it's right there. Okay, check it out, check it out, check it out. I made my first mistake. Not bad, I am human. I initially had the graphics card mounted on this PCI slot. PCI slots are generally where you mount graphics cards to. Your motherboard comes equipped with 2. And I initially had it here by mistake. I'm supposed to have it on PCI 1. You can see that. Let me turn on the light. So PCI Extended 1. I should have had it here. I initially had it here on PCI E2. So primarily when you mount a graphics card, make sure it's on the PCI 1 slot, closer to the CPU. She's coming along. You got your GPU, your CPU fan mount, your RAM, your M2 drive, fans mounted, PSU installed, see back there. I'll be outfitting all the wires that go into the motherboard, and then we'll fire her up. These wires are from your front panel, and they plug into your motherboard with the corresponding label, HD audio and front panel. This is from your front panel to make the power button and plugs in the top of your case function. Goes into your audio 1 on your motherboard, right there. And your front panel power is right there, which is FP1. So next we'll be routing the cables from the power supply unit to the motherboard. There are basically 2 types of power supply units. There's the modular and the non-modular. This particular model is the modular, meaning the cables aren't permanently attached. So you attach each cable with the corresponding label. So the labels are on the actual power supply unit itself. So now then you just plug each cable that's labeled accordingly. PCI, the power supply unit, goes to PCI on the graphics card. The label marked motherboard here goes to the motherboard, which is right next to your DIMMs, your RAM. The CPU from the power supply unit would go to your CPU plug, which is located just left of your CPU chip. Windows has been successfully loaded. I created 3 accounts. I'll delete mine later. I just needed it to set it up. So choose any one of these. I have a temporary password. I have it set up for both monitors right now, so dual monitor display. So Windows is good.